Good to be with you. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back after a Wednesday off. Hope dinner was great. I thought it was great. It was a good potluck this time. We are going to be in Genesis 26. You can turn there. Genesis 26. I'll pray, and then we can jump in. Father, we pray that you would help us. You know that our hearts are hard. You know that our minds are distracted. You know that our hearts can be arrogant and puffed up in knowledge. And we just pray, Father, that you would help with all of that you'd soften us so that our hearts are that softened soil ready to receive your implanted word. Help us come with humble, joyful hearts to learn from your word. Help us understand as we study. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, Genesis 26. You know, there's a very important three words that we need to remember if we're going to really understand the importance of Genesis 26 and Genesis 27, which hopefully we'll finish both today. And the three words are Abraham is dead. Abraham is dead. So if you remember, that happened in Genesis 25, and we highlighted that it was a man who died in faith, and we looked at what that looks like. What did it look like to die in faith? How did he trust the Lord leading up to his death? How was he this model of faith even all the way into death? But what I think, at least one thing we should feel as we read this story is that this story so far has been about him, and it's been about how God has been faithful to him. God has communicated his blessing over and over and over for the past 12 or 13 chapters. It's all been God relating to Abraham, but now Abraham is dead. Abraham had received all those promises, and it was promises that included his descendants, but now he's dead. And so how are those going to continue? How is God going to remain faithful? How is that blessing going to pass from generation to generation? What is that going to look like? So in chapter 26, we already studied some of this. We saw that Abraham's son, Isaac, he goes along this journey that has so many similar elements to what happened with Abraham. So first he deals with Abimelech, and he's headed down there. On the way, the Lord appears to him and recites this blessing and passes it to him. Then he gets down with Abimelech, and he tells Abimelech and those around that his wife, Rebekah, is his sister. And we laughed about that last time because it's so similar to how Abraham was afraid and resorted to that. And so, verse 10, Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, "Whoever touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." So they discover what happened. You remember, they discover it because they were laughing together. And what's the word that means laughter? Do you remember? Isaac, it's his name. Remember, he was named the word laughter. And I read this week, I didn't know this last week, so I didn't say it, but apparently that can be like the kind of flirting or romantic kind of laughter. If you remember the whole story with Potiphar's wife, what she accuses Joseph of is that kind of laughter. So I think it was the kind of joking that is appropriate for a husband and wife, the kind that makes the wife blush and makes the kids say, "Oh, Dad," that kind of stuff. So I think it's, that kind of flirting or laughter. I'm just reading that into the story. But it's something that gave them away. No, those two people, their husband and wife. So Abimelech knew, and he says, "What is this you've done? You could have, someone could have accidentally taken your wife, and it would have been terrible." So Abimelech sets it right. "Whoever touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." Verse 12, "And Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. He had possessions of flocks and herds and many servants, so that the Philistines envied him." We began to look at this last time because it's such an obvious, I think that truly one of the huge ideas we're supposed to walk away with is that God had promised to bless Abraham and his descendants, and it's happening in such wildly obvious ways. And first, it happened with Abraham. When he is sojourning, then sure enough, his flocks and his servants, they're multiplying, and his wealth is growing. So it's so big that, and this is even towards the beginning, but it's so big that he even has to separate from Lot. You remember that? There wasn't enough room for them. And it just keeps going from there. His wealth, it keeps multiplying. The Lord is blessing him. Well, you have the same kind of thing here with Isaac. We're going to see the same kind of thing with Jacob. We're going to see the same kind of thing with Joseph. Over and over, the Lord's blessing is almost absurd. Let me read that again, verse 12. Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. That's a lot of fold, right? 100-fold. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. So the Lord is blessing him, not just spiritually, like we saw earlier in the chapter, but also materially, which creates problems. So the similar problems that Abraham had with the Philistines, they weren't called the Philistines yet. They were just called Abimelech and his people. But they start to grow so that there's envy and there's even fear, we're going to see later in the passage. So verse 14, he had many possessions of flocks and herds and many servants, so that the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." Okay, tell me about verse 15. Why would you do something like that? The Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servant had dug in the days of Abraham, his father. Yeah. I think they're trying to prevent other people that could potentially be enemies from growing. Right? So Abraham had sojourned in this land before, in the region that he was sojourning in, and he had dug wells, and they were his wells. We're going to come back to those in just a minute. Well, the Philistines that lived nearby, they filled these wells, which to me just feels super rude. I don't know. It's just mean. But they filled these wells with dirt eventually. After Abraham was gone, they went and filled these wells with dirt. And so you can kind of see what's in their heart. They're thinking politically, they're thinking strategically, they're protecting their own people. And so, verse 16, I think you have that same attitude. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." Now, I don't think that the wells are in the same spot that they're interacting right now. I think he's saying back where Abraham used to dwell, Abraham had dug some wells. Now Isaac is over here with Abimelech, and he's about to send them away. Well, where Isaac is going to go is back into this land where all the wells are filled. Does that make sense? So he says, "Go away, you've become mightier than us. You're much mightier than we." And so, verse 17, this sets up the story. So Isaac departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water that had been dug in the days of Abraham his father, which the Philistines had stopped after the death of Abraham. You see the connection there? You see why we had that parenthetical statement earlier? So now he's dwelling in this land, and he's going to start to redig the wells. He gave them the names that his father had given them. Verse 19. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek. Esek means contention. So there's going to be this conflict now. They've dug a well, they've refound a well, and the people that are living there say, no, that one's ours. So verse 21, then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that also. So he called its name Sitnah, which means enmity. Verse 22, and he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." Rehoboth means like wide open space. There's room. Okay, so they dig two. There's a quarrel. If we're reading this with Genesis so far, usually these things are happening in ways that are not fair. It would have been perfectly reasonable for Isaac to stay there, enjoy this well that he dug. It had been filled, and these people are just being a little pesky. No, I know you dug that well, but it's actually ours, But he just obliges and keeps moving on and digging the wells until there's enough room for them to dwell and not be harassed by the people. Let's pause. Any questions so far? Summary so far, the Lord has blessed Isaac so much and multiplied him that even though he was sojourning over near the Philistines and in their territory, they said, "You need to get away. You're stronger than we are now. As a whole people group, you are stronger. Your family is stronger than we are because the Lord has blessed you so much. Go away." Verse 23, from there he went up to Beersheba. And the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, "I am the God of Abraham your father. Fear not, for I am with you and will bless you and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake." Pause there, because that's where it ends. This is something that we almost get used to as we keep going through these chapters, but really these are all major events as these visions are happening, as this revelation is happening. It happened several times with Abraham, and the promise was clarified and clarified. Well, now it's at least the second time this has happened with Isaac, right? That the Lord has again said, "This blessing is on you because of Abraham's sake, because of how he obeyed me. You have this blessing." So it happens again. "I'm going to multiply your offspring." Verse 25. So Isaac built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well, another well. When Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzath, his advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his army, Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, seeing that you hate me and have sent me away from you?" Okay, that's the same thing you would ask too. Okay, so are you lost in the story? Are you following along? He was dwelling with the Philistines. He became so strong he had been sent away. He's digging well after well until they find a place to just land. And finally they land, and Abimelech comes with the commander of the army. And we don't know why he comes, so he's going to answer. Verse 28. They said, "We see plainly that the Lord has been with you." So we said, "Let there be a sworn pact between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done to you nothing but good and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord." Now, we could really quibble with them, right? They said, "Oh, we've done nothing but good to you." It's not really true, right? They were kind of cranky. They envied. They wanted to send him away because they were fearful. So I don't think that Abimelech can honestly say he's only done good. But you can see why he's coming. These people knew who Abraham was, and they knew that he was blessed of the Lord. Generations ago, or maybe not generations ago, a generation ago, they would have known Abraham was the one who went and conquered all those forces with that alliance. They would have respected and known him. They apparently would have known even the name of his God, Yahweh. Remember, when it's all caps, that's that personal name, Yahweh. So they understand now that God was with Abraham. Now it's very obvious to us all that Yahweh is with you, Isaac. And I think that's the point of this part of this chapter. It's telling us with certainty God's blessing has passed officially from Abraham to Isaac, and it's so obvious that even an unbelieving nation can come and say, this is so obvious to us. We see this. This is plain to us. So let me read that again. We see plainly that Yahweh has been with you. So he said, let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us. Let us make a covenant with you so that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done to you nothing but good and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of Yahweh. You see what they're saying? This is obvious. Number one, that's terrifying for us. If Yahweh is blessing you like he blessed Abraham, we want an alliance with you, please. Can you please not hurt us? That's dangerous. But number two, this is obvious to everyone. You are now the blessed of Yahweh. You see how that's so emphasized there? Verse 30. He responds graciously. So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths, and Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. And that same day, Isaac's servants came and told him about the well they had dug and said to him, we have found water. And he called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. Now, that word for Sheba means oath. And so it was well of the oath. But remember, Abraham had already named it Beersheba. And it says that Isaac dwelled and came to dwell back in verse 23 in Beersheba. And so again, he renames it this same thing. He says this well is that Beersheba well. And we made another oath here, and it's still called this to this day, which I would take as Moses saying that. It's still called that. Verse 34. When Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Okay, so just to finish off that chapter, and I'll open it up for questions in just a second. Just to finish off that chapter, we get a little note from Esau's life, that he took wives from the surrounding region. Remember, Abraham wouldn't do that for Isaac. He wouldn't let a wife be taken for Isaac from the surrounding peoples. He wanted it to be taken from his people. And so now you have Esau instead doing the opposite and taking not just one wife, but two from the Hittites. And they make life miserable for Rebekah and Isaac. So we just get a note on Esau there. Okay, so any questions? Any thoughts? I know we're starting to expand as the family, but you have Isaac, or you have Abraham, and then you have Isaac, and now has been born as Jacob and Esau. Okay, so we kind of went back to the story of Isaac for a little bit, but then we hear about one of his sons, Esau, at the end of the chapter we just read, Jacob's brother. Eric, do you have something? Yeah, I think what he's saying there is not that Abraham's obedience has somehow earned or paid for this. Instead, I think what he's saying is that I made a deal with Abraham, basically. And the deal was, if you obey me, then I'm going to bless you and your descendants like this. And Abraham did obey, and he acted in faith. And so God repeated that promise unconditionally, right? That now he has this unconditional, okay, I am going to bless you and your descendants forever. And so in Isaac's lifetime, you remember what he said at the beginning of chapter 26. Verse 4, I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and I will give to your offspring all these lands, and in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. So it's this deal of this special arrangement with Abraham. Abraham's descendants are blessed because of Abraham's obedience. And so now we're in that next generation, and so he's able to tell Isaac, hey, Abraham obeyed, and so these promises are yours. And that same thing we're going to see in the next chapter is going to pass on to Jacob. and then to the 12, his 12 sons. But even in later generations, the Lord, as he's speaking through the prophets to them, he's going to say things like, you are blessed, you are loved for the sake of your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's never going to go away. It's always Abraham, this friend of God, because of what he did. Now forever they have these unconditional promises. I think so, yeah. Now, of course, it is all the nations are going to be blessed through them. And I think we'd say, if we're getting theological about it, I think we'd say, well, why is that forgiveness possible? Why is that blessing possible? Well, it's possible because of what Christ did on the cross, right? That's why that forgiveness and this blessing can come. But I think what he's referencing there, as he mentions Abraham, is that arrangement, that promise. Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah, Ramiro? I think so. We kind of get a feeling like 34 and 35 are in the meantime kind of situation. At least that's the feeling I get. Is like over the years that this was happening, let's catch up on the life of Esau. Now he married these Hittite women, and they were making life miserable. What else? Any other questions? All right, so big idea. Yes, Abraham's dead, but the promise of God isn't over. It's just getting started, right? Now this promise has come to Isaac of this special blessing, and we've seen it so obvious that even the Gentiles around are saying, wow, you have the blessing of Yahweh. It is so clear that you are the blessed of Yahweh. Well, now we're going to see that so obviously in the life of Jacob as well. If we could title tonight or Wednesday night together, it could just be obvious blessing. Obvious blessing. We're going to see it in Jacob's life as well, the next generation. Chapter 27. Now, we dealt with this generation a little bit in Genesis 25 because Jacob and Esau had already been born, they had already grown, and there was a whole thing about the stew. You remember the lentil stew? And he sells his birthright. Esau sells his birthright to Jacob for that stew. It's already been prophesied when they were in the womb that the older shall serve the younger. So we already have some details on Jacob and Esau, but it's just going to explode in chapter 27. So look at verse 1. When Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son. And he answered, here I am. And he said, behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Was working on this. Now I've forgotten because it's been a couple of weeks, but he seems to live, actually, if we add up the years of his life and when people are born, quite a ways after this, like decades after this. But he is old, his sight has been failing, and he says, I do not know the day of my death, which is very true. And so he's thinking his death is imminent. Verse 3, now then, take your weapons, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. Okay, there's going to be a couple peculiarities in this chapter. Like the first one, why doesn't he just bless him? Why does he come up with this thing of, all right, you need to go hunting, and then you need to come back, and you need to make me a meal so that I can bless you. I don't know if we can understand that. I don't know what the culture was. Again, later, we'll see, to give it away, when Jacob steals that blessing and deceives, Isaac starts trembling and says, it is what it is now. I can't take that blessing back. And again, that's almost something that's hard to understand. Why not? We would just change the will. I accidentally put Jacob down. I'll cross it out and put Esau down and, get a notary to attest to it, and now it's all fixed. But there's something very powerful about this idea of the blessing. Maybe he is understanding himself as a spokesman for Yahweh. He always already appeared to him several times to talk to him. There's something going on here that's very special about this blessing that I don't know if we understand all the ins and outs of. But he tells his older son, go hunt the game, bring it back so I can bless you. Verse 5, now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare for them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies. Okay, there's the secret plan. I was whispering a little bit, so hopefully you heard it. But she makes this deception, okay? Esau's going to go away and hunt. She says, Jacob, you should have the blessing. You go get two young goats and bring them. I'll cook them. We can give it to your dad, and you'll get the blessing instead of Esau. Okay, you good so far? Now, the other question, the puzzle here, is what is going on in Isaac's heart? What we know for sure is that to Rebekah, it was revealed by God that the older would serve the younger. And so their whole life, she prefers the younger, but we heard earlier that Isaac preferred Esau because he liked to eat of his game, right? What's going on there? I think you only have 2 options, maybe 3. And that's that Rebekah never told Isaac. Maybe she's like Mary and she treasured up these things in her heart. And this is a thing that the Lord told her, but only she knows it, that the older will serve the younger, and for some reason she doesn't tell. I think that might be an option. Another option, she does tell, hey, Isaac, I know Esau came out first, but Jacob, the one that was holding onto his heel as he came out, the Lord said he's going to be the one that the blessing goes to. And Isaac just forgot. I suppose that's an option. It seems like this would have been something that everybody knew to me, and that they wouldn't have forgotten, that the older will serve the younger. God has already pronounced a blessing on the younger, on Jacob, and yet Isaac wants to give that blessing to Esau. So to me, it seems like almost something, I don't know. Isaac, did you have something to say? I think Esau at least knew that he promised to give his birthright to Jacob, right, after the stew incident. So I think as we're thinking about this people and this whole mess, okay, this mess of this afternoon, whenever this was, and Isaac has just said, okay, I want to give you the blessing. You go get a meal so I can have a reason to bless you. And Esau runs off and goes and hunts, and Rebekah comes up with this plan, and Jacob will eventually agree to this plan. I think it's all kind of messy. I think Isaac is in some sense either not trusting God or going against what he said. Esau knows that he's already forfeited his birthright and given it to Jacob. Jacob is going to go along with this plan of Rebekah, and they're both going to be a little deceptive. It's just a messy situation, like most of the rest of Jacob's life is a messy situation. So it's a situation the Lord's going to work through. So look at verse 11. But Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man. We knew that from the time he was born, right? And I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. And his mother said to him, let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go, bring them to me. So she says, you just go obey. You let me worry about that. If he curses you, I'll take it for you. I'll take the curse for you. But Jacob's concerned. He's so smooth. His dad's going to feel him. He doesn't have good eyesight, and so he can smell the food. He can eat the food. But if he feels, he wants to be hairy. He's worried about it. Verse 14. So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hand of her son Jacob. Okay, so he's got a whole costume now, right? He takes some goat skin, and I think he must have been pretty hairy. Esau, I think he just must have been really hairy because he's as hairy as a goat. And they say that right from the moment he's born, that's what's striking about him is he's hairy. And so Jacob puts on the skin, goat skin, to have some of the hair, and he puts on Esau's clothes so he'll smell like Esau. Did you have a question? I do. That's a really good question. So her question is this really something Isaac is supposed to do? Is this something that's in his power? Or was it always going to pass to Jacob anyways? We're going to come back to that question later in the chapter. I teased that a little bit the last time we talked about this. What is the reason that Jacob ended up with the blessing? Is it because God prophesied it when he was in the womb? Or is it because he did the tricky situation with the birthright and the bowl of stew? Or is it because he's doing this deception and getting this blessing, live action, like we're reading right now? Which is it? I think we'd have to say it's all of it. It's God orchestrating events to all point to this, that God has decided Jacob will get the blessing, and so this is inevitable, and it happens through the prophecy, through the lentil stew, and through this event that's happening. I said we'll talk about it later, and I just gave it away, but there you go. But hold that in your mind, because we're going to keep talking about that. Okay, she's got the delicious food, gives it to Jacob, verse 18. So he went in to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." Okay, so just to be clear, that was a lie. That was not a bending of the truth. I'm your son. I have prepared game like you like it. No, it's I am Esau, your firstborn. This is flat out black and white. There's deception going on here. Verse 20. But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." So now he even brings Yahweh into this lie, right? It's because God brought me success hunting. Verse 21. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." Okay, so Jacob knew his dad. He knew that this was a possibility, and he was right. So Isaac wants to feel him. So verse 22, so Jacob went near to Isaac, his father, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He answered, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him. Okay, pause there. We'll read the blessing. So that's when, Isaac has something up his sleeve too. Something doesn't sound right with his voice. I want to smell him as well. So he calls him in for a kiss, and he can smell, truly, it feels like Esau. He made game like I like it, and he now smells like Esau. This must be Esau. And of course, Jacob's saying the whole time, "I'm Esau, I'm Esau." And so finally, this blessing comes, okay? In the middle of verse 27, he blessed him and said, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Now, last time, a couple of us were talking at the front, maybe it's all separate things. Maybe Isaac was never being disobedient because maybe Isaac knew all along that, yes, the older would serve the younger, but I can still give the older the birthright. And we don't know how it's going to happen, that this is going to happen. But you can write down Hebrews 12:16. It really seems that all these things are equated. That we're not supposed to separate out the prophecy and the birthright and the blessing as three different things. That we're to understand all of those as synonymous. And so, as Jacob deceives and takes the birthright from Esau, he's taking the blessing, and Esau knows it. As now he deceives Isaac and he receives this blessing, he's taking that real blessing that the Lord prophesied. I think we're supposed to think of those all as one thing, which is why I think they sound so similar, right? It was revealed to Rebekah, the older shall serve the younger. And now Isaac is saying, be Lord over your brothers. That's part of the blessing. And so I think it's all meant to be one thing. We're to view this as one thing. Okay, let me read the blessing one more time. See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Now, what does that sound like, that last part? Abrahamic covenant, right? The blessing from God to Abraham, that everyone's going to be cursed who curses you, everyone's going to be blessed who blesses you. Well, Abraham, that was passed down to Isaac, not to Ishmael, right? That was very clear, and Abraham made that clear in life by sending away Ishmael and all of his other children so that it was only Isaac who got that blessing. Well, now here is Isaac with that blessing, and he's trying to pass it down to the next generation who he thinks should get that blessing. And he thinks it should be the firstborn, Esau, because he's a good hunter. God wants it to be Jacob. And Rebekah wants it to be Jacob. And Jacob wants it to be Jacob. And so this blessing has now passed to him. Now, another part of the question that you could consider is, why do their words have power? If I just said to one of my children, may you be blessed above your sibling, and may you always be happy even when your sibling is sad. My words don't have any kind of power to make that come true, right? I have no idea what's going to happen in their life. And nobody, if it happened the other way, that the other child was blessed, nobody would say, oh no, God didn't keep his promise because Jeff said he wanted this child to be blessed. That's just not how we speak, and we don't have that kind of relationship with the Lord. In Genesis, I think we're supposed to understand that they did. Abraham did have that relationship with that Lord and understood that there's a special blessing that's going to be passed down only through Isaac. And I think Isaac has that understanding, whether we call him a prophet or something similar like that. He has that understanding to speak that, and it is true. He can pass that down to the next generation. At least he thinks he can. And certainly that's the way it's going to happen. It's not the son he thinks, but that's the way it's going to happen. And it's going to happen one more time as Jacob passes down all the different blessings to the 12, right? Because at the end of Genesis, as you read that, 48, 49, 50, as you read those, and you read about each tribe and the blessing that's gone to each son, you see that play out in the life of Israel. And you see all those prophecies come true. So I think you have that understanding here, that the Lord is working through this. Yes, Eric? It seems like it. Because it says brothers, right? Be Lord over your brothers. So. Right. Yeah, so we know Isaac is the firstborn, literally, right? Because we remember Rebekah was barren. This is the first time she was able to get pregnant. And she gets pregnant with twins. So, but since it says brothers, I think we're to understand there's more eventually. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Jonathan? Yeah. I think so. I think they would have kept record of it. What we're going to see is that uh, Jacob just gets out of town because Esau wants to kill him. And he's going to be gone for a long time, right? And we're going to read that story, and he's not going to come back till years and years later. So it's not, I don't think it would have been a day-to-day conflict because he's just gone. And I think that that's part of the fallout, right? Okay, yes, it was successful. But did you really have to go through all the, it feels like an Ishmael kind of situation. Did you really have to go through all the deception and scheming? Couldn't you have just trusted the Lord? The Lord said it was going to be true, that you were going to receive this promise. You could have just trusted him. I think we're to see this as they're not quite acting in faith. I don't think that's the main point of the story. The main point is how the Lord is blessing and sending through there, but sending through the generations that blessing. But I think the rest of Jacob's life and the calamity that is Jacob's life and the hardship that he goes through, I think we're to view that as kind of fallout from some of this deceptive practices and unwise things he's doing. So let's keep reading. Let's try and get to the end of the chapter. I know we only have a few minutes, but verse 30. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father, and he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" And he answered, "I am your son, your firstborn, Esau." Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." This is a done deal. I was supposed to do this, passing on this blessing for the Lord. It's done. Verse 34, as soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" So he says, isn't Jacob rightly named? Remember, that means like trickster or deceiver. He said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Verse 37, Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants. And with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, "Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck." Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, "Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me?" Okay, so did you catch all that? Esau is understandably very angry. And he wants to kill Jacob. And he even says out loud at some point for Rebekah to hear that once Isaac dies, then he's going to kill Jacob. And so Rebekah says, "Okay, Jacob, you need to flee. You need to get out of here before that happens in case Isaac does die. You need to go to my brother, Laban, or Laban. You need to find a wife there and come back, because I don't want you to find a wife from these people anyways. And that's what she tells Isaac. Send Jacob away, find a wife from one of my people instead of a woman of the land. That's where our story ends for today. So, in such an obvious way, this blessing is passed to Isaac. Now, in such an obvious way, we haven't seen the blessing actually come, but we've seen this verbal proclamation through prophecy, through the stew event, and now through the actual passing of that blessing. It is obvious to everybody that this has now gone to Jacob. What we're going to see in the next few chapters is that we're going to see that come to fruition. We're going to see all that blessing pour into his life with all of the children and the multiplying of his herds and all of those kind of things. We're going to see that blessing in his life as well. But for now, we need to stop. So we'll continue the story later. We'll follow up with Jacob. How does he get there? What does he do when he gets there? And how is his life made miserable later? Some more sticky situations, okay? Pray with me. Father, help us be amazed at this astounding blessing that you gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Help us see what the Philistines saw, that your hand was so obviously on them, that the blessing unquestionably had passed from Abraham to Isaac and then from Isaac to Jacob. Help us see that and be amazed that you're keeping all of your promises. Help us be amazed that you're so faithful and you're so clear, and you make it so clear, and you reveal according to your word, and you reveal according to their experience, that exactly what you said would come to pass did come to pass. Help us see that and take courage as we read your word and trust that everything you said will come to pass, will come to pass. Help us have faith. In Jesus' name, amen.